670. You're listening to Retirement Journey with Justin Fort, where it's all about the health, wealth, and freedom you need to live life your way, all the way. I'm Justin. I'm here in studio with my sidekick and executive assistant by day, Jennifer Carter.
Hello. Good afternoon.
And you can call us live at 512-643-5483. Send us questions and comments to ask@fortwm.com. And, you know, Labor Day weekend,
Yes.
Hopefully you're enjoying yourself already. And if you're in the car traveling to wherever you're going, we wish you safety and a wonderful time. You know, we're going to be talking a little bit about long-term care, critical illness. One of the things that you know already can be a big threat in your retirement. You know, what do you think your chances of becoming a victim of long-term care really are? Have you thought about that? 1 in 100, 1 in 10. In a moment, you'll find out when we speak with Alan Hamm, author of How to Plan for Long-Term Care, about how you can ensure that you will live a carefree retirement come what may, regardless of whether or not long-term care becomes a reality for you or your spouse or your family. And, you know, back to the Memorial Day, or Labor Day, not Memorial Day. That's bad. Labor Day weekend. You know, it's always nice to get a taste of freedom.
Yes.
And I think any extended holiday, any federal holiday that we have, it just, for me at least, it gives me a taste of what retirement may be for me one day in the future. And that may be true for you. Can you imagine having a Labor Day every day for the next 30 or 40 years? For some of you, that may scare you. But for many of my clients, and probably you, this would be a godsend, ready to retire from work. And but you want to make sure that before you retire from work, that you've got all of your ducks in a row, got everything kind of handled and taken care of, and so that you can enjoy a Labor Day for the rest of all of your days and not be concerned about having to go back to work, you know. And we hear the joke all the time, well, I'm just going to end up being a Walmart greeter, and there's nothing wrong with that. There's nothing wrong with that. But if that's not your idea of a retirement, then you got to take the necessary steps, right?
Right.
And if it means working longer and saving a little bit more, then that's what it might take. But, you know, I just wanted to make everybody aware of an epiphany I had actually just before we got on the air here. I was talking to Jennifer outside of the studio here about how I think that there's been a big misconception with respect to what is a retirement plan. I think a lot of us have been told over the years that a well-diversified portfolio of mutual funds or stocks and bonds or ETFs or exchange-traded funds, if you will, what have you, is a retirement plan. And I'm telling you that it's not. It's a big, I wouldn't say a lie, but it's just a big misconception, at the very least. And it's dangerous, I think, for you to believe that just because you have a well-diversified portfolio of securities, stocks, mutual funds, what have you, whether it's with Schwab, Fidelity, Edward Jones, Raymond James, I mean, you name any of the places, or if you're doing it yourself, that's not a retirement plan. That's a tool for a retirement plan. It's a tool. And what's that tool supposed to do? Provide us access to risk. Why do we want access to risk? You might ask. Well, I'll tell you, because you want growth. You don't want access to risk because you want loss. You want access to risk because you want growth. And on average, markets move up over time. On average, right? We know that. But there's short-term periods where markets don't go up. They go down. We have corrections. We have bear markets. You know that already. Those are tools. Retirement portfolios are tools. We want to make sure we're well diversified at the appropriate risk level. And that's why it's important to have a retirement plan that helps you understand how much you can have allocated to a particular portfolio and what risk level that well-diversified portfolio maybe ought to be for you and your family, so that you can enjoy every day of retirement like you are going to enjoy Labor Day. A proper retirement plan is going to include how much you can draw from your accounts, how you file with Social Security, how much you're going to be getting from Social Security, pensions, military pensions, what your tax levels look like. What about long-term care? What about this critical or chronic illness problem? You know it's a problem. You know it can be expensive. And what I don't want you to do is be like so many people out there that just put their heads in the sand and say, well, I'm not going to worry about it because I think that it just is something I can't deal with. So I don't want to look at it because it's an ugly monster. We don't want that. We need to face what is likely, what is probable with an appropriate plan. And that's exactly what we do at Fort Wealth Management throughout the day, during the week. I meet with people like you to help you evaluate, create, and analyze a retirement plan that fits your needs and your goals so that you can more than likely have the kind of retirement that you want, like a Labor Day, for the rest of your time, and have the protections in place so that something like long-term care or critical or chronic illness doesn't creep in to a portfolio-only type plan and devastate you and your family. There's many other facets and factors to having a well-balanced retirement plan, and that includes using many tools. Just so you know, again, it's my belief and my opinion, I think of many other people, that a stock portfolio, bond portfolio, well-diversified securities portfolio is not a retirement plan. You have to have everything taken into account, and it would be a good idea, if you'd like help, to visit with us. You can call us at 512-433-6492 at the office. You can come to our seminars we do. We're trying to get the word out. I'm trying to do all that I can as a planner to help as many of you out there that would like and need help and appreciate the guidance of a fiduciary financial planner that's independent, that can look at all of your options as much as possible to put together a retirement plan that you're going to need. And it doesn't mean that we're just going to be looking at securities or stocks or an annuity or only a long-term care policy or anything like that. You need to have a very comprehensive plan. It's the difference of looking at a tool like a hammer, right, and a schematic like a architectural design or blueprint for a building. So we need to make sure that you have a blueprint. And that's what we do day in and day out. And you know what? We're going to be talking about one of those elements of retirement that you just can't ignore, and that is critical illness and chronic illness and how to plan for long-term care. And we've got today with us Alan Hamm, author of How to Plan for Long-Term Care. Jennifer, can you tell us a little bit about Alan?
Yes, Alan Hamm is the author of the book How to Plan for Long-Term Care. He is also the founder of the National Alliance of Objective Financial Advisors and authors of 15 Must-Ask Questions of the Financial Advisor Report.
Alan, how you doing?
Great, Justin and Jennifer. Great to be with you guys.
We are very excited to have you on the show to talk about a sensitive topic. And your book is, I have to say, I haven't read word for word, but I've read quite a bit from it. And from what I have read, it's a fantastic book full of helpful information.
Well, thank you for that, Justin. It took me 2 years to write that book because I don't really consider myself an author, but I did want to take a topic that's very difficult to face and very negative, but a reality for a lot of our futures, and try to make it as interesting and valuable as possible for people.
When we get back from our break, we're going to be visiting with Alan Hamm a little bit more about how to avoid a broke retirement, 7 steps that Alan has for us, how to plan for long-term care. And again, you can call us at 512-643-5483. Send us questions to ask@fortwm.com. This is Justin. The show is Retirement Journey with Justin Fort, where it's all about the health, wealth, and freedom you need to live life your way, all the way. And this is Talk 1370.
I know you won't let me
Talk 1370. You're listening to Retirement Journey with Justin Fort. You can call us live at 512-643-5483. Send us questions, comments to ask@fortwm.com. Alan, we are back, and I wanted to ask you a question before we went to break that I think is really important. What are the chances that something unexpected happens during retirement?
Well, when it comes to this issue of long-term care, there's really a lot of statistics out there. A lot of advisors and insurance companies really try to tell people that their odds of needing long-term care are probably 1 in 2. But they're really not that high because of the true definition of long-term care, and that is needing assistance for more than 100 days. As you said, you went through my book some, and you probably remember in Chapter 1, I define long-term care right away as needing assistance for 100 days or longer. The reason is when we're planning ahead for long-term care, we want to face the true risk. And needing care for under 3 months really is not a big financial risk for most people. Some people can rely on the government. Medicare may pay for some of that. Or if they pay for it out of assets, we're not talking about hundreds of thousands of dollars. We're talking about tens of thousands of dollars. But if you need care for longer than 100 days, a lot of times that can turn into needing care for many, many years. The odds of needing care for longer than 100 days are about 1 in 5. That surprises a lot of people. They think that the odds are greater than that. But when you really think about it, that's still pretty good odds, and really speaks to the fact that all of us need to have a plan for long-term care.
Right, and the longer we live, the higher our individual probabilities go up. Right?
Well, that's exactly right. Just wanted to comment on something that you were talking about earlier and what a retirement plan is not. I'm in the process of putting together a concept called a longevity plan. And I think that's what people really need is a longevity plan, which really answers 3 questions. Where is my income coming from? And that's what firms like yours do a very good job of helping people with. But there's other questions. What am I going to do with my spare time? And the last question might be, how am I going to stay healthy so that I live long and die short? And what do I really mean by that? I mean that, speaking to your comment and question about longevity, a lot of us are going to live past 100 years of age. We're taking care of ourselves, and we really need to think about what it means if we live a whole generation in retirement. And this long-term care issue is something that could really throw a monkey wrench in that whole part of our lives if we don't plan ahead for it.
Yeah, and another point to add to what you're saying, Alan, is that even if we were to think that, well, that may not be me, well, if it's not you, if the averages are higher, people are living longer just on average, that's going to be mean something for our society, for our economy. It's going to put additional burden onto Medicaid programs and welfare programs, and more than likely, like you talk about in the book, your book, increase the cost of beds at facilities and assisted living care. As we know, prices are dictated by supply and demand economics.
That's right, and I think in the future, I think entrepreneurs are going to find ways to take care of people in less expensive ways. This is a huge problem for our society, as you mentioned, and we can't continue down the road of providing nursing home beds for people thinking that that's the way to handle this problem. I think, once again, getting back to this concept of a longevity plan, if we find fulfilling things to do with our time and we figure out ways to take care of our health, not only are we doing something great for ourselves and our families, but for society in general.
Right, and I think that it's important for all of us to do our part to protect ourselves and our family as much as possible so that we don't add to the problem. I know that a lot of my clients feel very strongly that they don't want to be dependent on their children. They don't want to be dependent on the government, and they feel in some ways that it's their duty to almost like recycling, as an idea, an analogy, right? If everyone does recycle, then we can make a difference. And everyone just needs to do it. We can't wait to see if everyone else is going to start recycling to decide to recycle, right? We all have to make a decision on our own to do what's right for our environment, for our society, for our government, right? Because the government is we the people, as much as we'd like to throw rocks at it and say, well, it's gotten away from us, and maybe to a good extent that's happened. You know, people are kind of disillusioned by that. But you know what the individual does in our society, what the individual baby boomer does with their money is going to really impact, from what I can see, what I can tell, really impact the state of long-term care, the costs, the state of retirement, the equity market, you name it, across the board. Impact on inflation, on GDP, everything depends on what baby boomers really, in a greater and greater way, because of the size of that cohort, what baby boomers do with their funds and how they position themselves with a longevity plan, like you're saying, or a retirement plan, which I think are really one and the same. I don't think any logical retirement planner would want to plan for people living to 70 or living to 75. If they're being conservative, you want to project your clients to live to 100, maybe even 100 plus, right, Alan?
I agree.
And so if you're just tuning in, I just want you to know that you're listening to The Retirement Journey with Justin Fort, where it's all about the health, wealth, and freedom you need to live life your way, all the way. Of course, I'm Justin. And you can call us live at 512-643-5483 or send us questions and comments to ask@fortwm.com if you want us to know something or you need to ask something about long-term care. Feel free to get in touch with us. You can do that right now if you want to ask Alan Hamm a question. Alan is the author of How to Plan for Long-Term Care. Alan has, in his book, which I'd highly recommend, and we're going to talk about how you can get a copy of that later. He has 7 steps to avoid a broke retirement, which is, I believe, the number one fear, according to numerous Gallup polls, AARP polls, that retirees have or baby boomers have today. And without giving too much of your book away, Alan, can you tell us about the 7 steps you recommend, or at least a few of them? And we may need to go to break in between, but can you give us some insight on some of those steps that you recommend for planning for a secure retirement?
Absolutely, and really one of them is a health care plan, which is what we're focusing on here today. And when it comes to health care planning, you really have 2 aspects. You have what we might call medical needs or acute illnesses that we develop that can really be solved in one of 2 ways. It can either be solved by some sort of procedure, say a surgery, or unfortunately for some, if it's a terminal illness, it's solved by our demise. Those types of health care issues are not that big of a problem. We focus as a society on it a lot. Obamacare was passed a few years ago. We really talk about health care expenses, but most of us are taken care of when it comes to those types of issues. If we have a major health issue develop, we're going to be taken care of in our country. The other side is the chronic illnesses that we develop that really are not medical in nature, but they require assistance. And this is where this issue of long-term care comes in. And our country has not done a good job of handling this issue. So the question begs is, if you live a long life, if you live into your 90s or past age 100, and you develop a memory issue or the need for assistance because you've grown old and frail, there's really no good plan in place to take care of you unless you, as you mentioned earlier, take responsibility and develop a plan yourself to take care of yourself. So this is one of the biggest issues when it comes to making sure that you're not broke in retirement, and that is having a good health care plan in place.
Health care, chronic illness, Obamacare, these are all very hot topics. And I know that a lot of you out there have a lot of opinions strongly about what the government's doing or not doing right in these areas. But what you need to know is what you can do. And we're visiting with Alan Hamm when we get back from break a little bit more about these 7 steps that you can take to better protect yourselves for a longevity retirement, as Alan puts it. And again, you can call us at 512-643-5483. Email to ask@fortwm.com. This is Justin Fort. The show is Retirement Journey, and this is Talk 1370.
Only the good die young. Only the good die young. You might have heard I run with a dangerous crowd. We ain't too pretty, we ain't too proud. We might be laughing a bit too loud, but I never hurt no one. So come on, I don't mind you coming here, wasting all my time.
Talk 1370. You're listening to Retirement Journey with Justin Fort. Again, you can call us live at 512-643-5483. Send us questions and comments to ask@fortwm.com. We're visiting with Alan Hamm, author of How to Plan for Long-Term Care Retirement. We're talking about specifically the 7 steps that you can take to avoid being broke. That's not what you want. You don't want to be broke. Who wants to be broke?
No way.
How fun is that to have a Labor Day weekend? You got no money. Well, I guess you could go to the park or something, right? There's things you can do for sure. Mm-hmm. But money just makes the world so much better when you've got it. We don't want you to be broke. You know that. So, Alan, how do we help people not be broke?
Well, circling back around to this healthcare issue, which is really our topic here today, we need to realize, again, that the medical part of healthcare is pretty well taken care of. But when it comes to these chronic illnesses of needing assistance because you've developed a memory problem or maybe an illness that, or not an illness, but just simply growing old and needing assistance, it's not taken care of. So one of the first steps is to face this issue, and that's what your listeners are doing today. They're facing the potential that they may live a long life and need assistance from someone else later on. And another step would be to educate themselves about this issue of long-term care, dispel certain myths that we talked about earlier, the scare tactics that some advisors use and some insurance companies use, and that is that there's a 1 in 2 chance of needing long-term care. The reason that we need to dispel myths like that is it makes people turn away and walk away from something that's very serious because they're saying, you know, I'm trying to be sold here. People are trying to scare me. If the truth was told that your odds of needing care are 1 in 5, then you're going to face the issue and say, well, let's do something about this. Nobody's trying to scare me here. They're really trying to help me. Another step would be to learn about the options. What are your options for planning for long-term care? There's really 4 options. 2 of them are not very positive. One would be to rely on the government. And we've touched on this a little bit today. The implications of having to rely on the government are not very good. Another option would be to rely on your family. That's not a very good option either. Mm-hmm. If you get old and need help, having to have your family members alter their lifestyles to take care of you is not something that most of us want to do. Mm-hmm. The other 2 options are positive, and one of those is to rely on your assets, and that is work with an objective financial advisor to help you determine whether or not you already have the assets to reach all your financial objectives and still face and pay for a long-term care need. If you're in that situation now, or it looks like you could be in the very near future, then you can avoid the 4th and last option for paying for long-term care, and that's long-term care insurance. Long-term care insurance can be a very good option for some people who are not in that previous category of already accumulated the assets that they need to handle the need. So our recommendation is to work with an objective financial advisor to help you determine which of those last 2 options makes most sense to you. Should you rely on your assets, or should you rely on long-term care insurance, or maybe a combination of the 2, meaning you might buy long-term care insurance to pay for some of the cost and pay for some of the potential cost yourself out of pocket.
And Alan, I want to drive your comments there a little bit further home with our listeners. I want you to know that what Alan is saying is it's very important for you to be working with someone, really, like myself, there at Fort Wealth Management, that can take a look at the landscape of things that you have, your wishes, your goals, not just look at how to well diversify a single portfolio account like an IRA or something like that. It's more than that. It's broader scoped. We've got to look at whether or not you're capable of taking on the risk of long-term care with the assets you've got today, how much you're going to have to leave in reserves to continue to protect in case long-term happens at 80, 85, 90, 95 years old. Because if you're going to self-insure, it's just my opinion, and you can correct me if you think I'm wrong, Alan, that for those folks that are not going to have something in place like a long-term care policy, they're going to have to either have a high enough income floor coming from annuities, pensions, Social Security, and such, or have an asset pool that can be drawn from to help cover the costs, whether it's at home or a facility. And in some cases, that could mean that you don't get to spend all of the money that you've saved in retirement because you need to have so many reserves for that just in case risk that may happen. That may be two out of five risk. And we also don't know the extent of the expense because we know that long-term care can increase with a faster rate than maybe the normal inflation rate. But what do you think about that, Alan?
Well, I agree with you. This is why it's important to work with an objective financial advisor who can really take a look at your overall picture. And there's payoffs of those two choices of long-term care insurance or assets. As Justin mentions, if you decide to rely on your assets, you may need to be a little bit more careful about the way you draw down on those assets. So an argument for buying long-term care insurance would be, well, it frees me. I'm paying these premiums, so I'm now able to enjoy my retirement a little bit more. So depending on your lifestyle and your level of assets and where that money is allocated, really kind of determines what your plan for long-term care should be.
And Alan, I just want to interrupt you there to just tell you that I was sitting here smiling at Jennifer like he said it. You made the point, and it's very logical. It's science-based in a sense. It's mathematically correct that if you want to spend more of your retirement money, if you are eyeballing the dollars in your IRA and your 401k and you're thinking, I'm going to spend all of that, I'm not sure how, maybe I need to meet with Justin or someone that can help me do that, but I'm going to spend all that money, you can't forget about protecting yourself for long-term care. So if you want to do that, there's definitely options where you don't have to rent a policy. You can buy there's so many options. We're going to talk more with Alan about some of the options that are out there that you can put into place so you don't have to worry about this risk anymore. And then you can go on your merry way, spending as much as you can. Because I know that that it may be you listening right now. It may be you that says, you know what, I want my last check to bounce. I want my children to cry at my funeral, not be smiling because of all the money that they got from me that I didn't get to spend in retirement because I was too afraid to do that. You know, money's meant to be spent. Again, I've said it numerous times. You have to have a plan that helps dictate who will be spending that money. If your wishes are for you to spend it, then you got to have a plan to spend it. But we have to make sure that you don't go broke in retirement, because I've never had anyone tell me I want to spend all my money and I want to be broke 5 years from now. They tell me that they want to spend all their money. If that's the case, not everyone's this way. But for those folks that say, I want to spend all my money in retirement, they always say, but as long as I don't run out. And you know what? We can't time your passing. We don't know how long your life is going to be. You may live a very long time. So that is a trick. It's difficult to do, and you need to be working with a specialist to do it that has your best interest in mind and at heart. And again, this is a retirement journey where it's all about the health, wealth, and freedom you need to live life your way, all the way. That's why you're listening. We're trying to empower you, give you information, not make recommendations to you for what you should be doing, but rather help you with some information that can help steer you in the right direction, and maybe go seek the help and support that you need so that you can have a retirement plan that's solid and takes into account a lot of these things that are very important. And again, a retirement plan is not a brokerage account. It's not a single policy. It's not any one thing. It's the culmination of all things, like a well-played symphony. You have to have all the instruments there, and you're the dictator on what that sound is going to be, what you want that sound to be like. And again, your goals are our goals, and that's the way it should be with a real, true fiduciary financial planner. You tell me where you want to be, and we'll help you pave the way. You tell us what you're trying to do, and we'll see if we can help you find a way to do it better. That's what we do at Fort Wealth Management during the day, every day. And we'd love to see you. Again, you can call us at 512-433-6492. And Alan, your experience, how many people do you think on average that you visit with have just gotten bad advice over the years about long-term care and what to do about it?
Percentage-wise, it's probably more than 50%. A lot of people are simply sold long-term care insurance outside the context of their overall financial objectives. This is why I think it's so important to see an objective financial advisor who can rise above and look at all of your picture, your total financial picture, and do a comprehensive job for you of determining what steps you should take to get on the right track, rather than just going out and buying long-term care insurance from an offer that's made through your workplace or some sort of solicitation that you've received through the mail. Probably better than 50% of the people think they've planned ahead for long-term care properly by doing that, and they really haven't. They bought insurance when they shouldn't have it at all, or they bought insurance but haven't bought the proper benefits. Mm-hmm. So once again, we can't emphasize enough that you need to see an objective financial advisor when it comes to this issue of planning for long-term care.
This is not like buying milk at the grocery store.
Absolutely not.
This is like visiting with a dietitian about what kind of foods you ought to be eating to be healthy, and a doctor to figure out what your blood pressure is and all that. That it's not about going out and shopping for something that sounds good, because the amount is very important. Like you're saying, Alan, I completely agree. Everyone needs to understand how much, if they're going to try to purchase a policy, some of these options we're going to talk about after we come back from a break here. If they're going to buy a policy from an insurance company, there's many questions that have to be asked ahead of time to determine how much insurance they need, whether they need it at all. And what I've found, and we can talk more about this when we get back, is that it doesn't make sense to buy a policy that isn't really going to keep you from depleting your assets and relying on Medicaid in the first place. If you don't have inflation protection on a policy, better be careful, especially if you bought it a long time ago. Or if you bought it today and you're 65, you may not need it until 30 years from now. What's the cost of long-term care going to be then? So what do you do about it? We're going to talk with Alan Hamm, author of How to Plan for Long-Term Care. When we get back from the break, we're going to be talking about some of the options. You definitely want to stay tuned for that. Again, this is Justin, Retirement Journey, Talk 1370. Talk 1370. You're listening to Retirement Journey with Justin Fort. You can call us live at 512-643-5483 or send us questions and comments to ask@fortwm.com. We're visiting with Alan Hamm, author of How to Plan for Long-Term Care. And Alan, we were just talking about the importance of comprehensive retirement planning. And in light of, recent market volatility, I think it's just wrong for a lot of people to be in a position where their plan is just a portfolio, and as they're looking at the markets going up and down, they're wondering whether or not they're going to be able to afford long-term care, be able to afford that retirement home, be able to afford all these other things that really, if they had $1 million or $1.2 million without a proper plan, they could still go broke in retirement if they spend too much of that early on, or maybe they don't spend enough and their retirement is just blah, and it could have been so much better, and they end up leaving behind a legacy that's 2, 3, 4 times as much as they wanted to, and didn't come anywhere near spending all of the money they wanted to in retirement. And so we're talking about how now, if we were to look at some options for long-term care, maybe looking into insurance policies, what are some of the options insurance-wise or not that we should be looking at, Alan?
Well, one is an aspect that you mentioned earlier, and that is to make sure if you buy long-term care insurance to have inflation protection with it. We talk with a lot of people who have bought insurance through their workplace, or maybe they bought it through the mail, and this gets back to bad benefit design. They could be as young as 50 years of age, and we've seen people without inflation protection. And getting back to our conversation earlier about living until you're possibly 100 years of age, what good is a long-term care insurance policy going to do if it hasn't kept up with inflation? Another thing that you want to look for with a long-term care policy is to make sure that it covers you in any environment. For instance, if you're able to stay in your own home and have someone come in and help take care of you, that's a great place to be. Most of us want to be at home. But if you're unable to stay at home because it's too costly or it's just logistically not going to work, you want a policy that covers you in an assisted living facility and in a nursing home as a last resort. Now, let me point out that most of us will probably never spend time in a nursing home unless we have to rely on the government, but we still want coverage that would take care of us if we did have to go into a nursing home for a period of time. So those are two of the most important things to consider when it comes to long-term care insurance.
And so, Alan, what you said, just to clarify, is that inflation protection is very important because costs are rising. So we need to make sure that may be an element on there. Or, basically, same kind of concept could be maybe they apply for a larger monthly benefit or a larger daily benefit or something to compensate for that if inflation protection isn't as high. But either way, we need to plan for increasing costs, right? And,
that's right.
And then the other thing you said is to make sure that everything's covered. And I'll tell you that a lot of people that have distaste or distrust with insurance companies, what I found is the case is that you may hear an anecdotal story from Joe at work's brother-in-law or friend somewhere that had this policy, and then so-and-so's mother-in-law had to go to a facility or stay at home, and the policy didn't cover it. What a mean insurance company. What a bad insurance company. They didn't do that. But you know what? The reality is it wasn't in the policy to begin with. It wasn't in writing. And I'll tell you that most of the time, people that are frustrated with insurance companies not paying out what they're supposed to, sue them if that's the case. But if that, and you know what? Insurance companies don't like to be sued. They don't. And they're going to, this is my belief, adhere to what's in writing. They're going to pay out what they have to and not a penny more. And if you don't have in writing in your policy that home care is included, then you're not going to get it from them. You have to go to a facility or assisted living facility to get benefits from that policy. So you got to make sure that these are in the policy. And we do this because I don't want to be, meeting with my clients' children 10, 15, 20 years from now when they ask me what we've done to protect their mother or their father in case they need long-term care, which now they do need it. Does it cover this? Does it cover that? And I don't want to be in a position where we didn't have a policy that covered all likely needs and positions or logistics for long-term care. If you're going to do it, you need to do it right. That's my belief.
And it gets back to making sure that you get good advice, working with the right person. If you are going to try to tackle this on your own, you simply need to read the policy to make sure you understand whether it covers you in all environments or not. But the best strategy is to work with someone that you trust who can help you with these decisions.
Yeah, and it's very important to shop. I'll tell you, shopping is really important. And you know what? When we shop policies, I don't care what company comes to the plate. If they're A-rated, and they're financially sound, and they have a good history, and the policy is right, the price is right, and it cannot be beat anywhere else suited for the plan, then that's what the client ought to use. But if XYZ company, different company, happens to be better, and who cares if it's name brand or not, they're financially sound, they're regulated, and they have everything in writing. And that's one thing, Alan, that I know you've probably done numerous times, is sat down with a couple that have purchased a long-term care policy in the past, and you ask them right away, well, what does this cover? And they have no idea.
That's right.
They don't know. And it's very important for us as planners to go through that policy that they have to see what's covered and what's not. And you know what I found in some cases, like you were mentioning earlier, Alan, is that they didn't get inflation protection, or they were missing the home care element, and that was the whole reason for it.
That's right.
But it's so much better to find out now than then, because many of the folks that I meet with, because we do a lot of Social Security seminars, and people are in the age range of 55 to say 75, if you will, they're still eligible to get more long-term care insurance or trade out a policy, although it's usually not beneficial to do it because, the prices they got years ago are pretty good, but they may be missing something there, and maybe they need some additional coverage now because maybe the agent missed the mark. They weren't working with a true financial planner, or things of that nature.
Just like other aspects of retirement planning, this is something that you don't take care of, put in a drawer, and never look at again. You need to review it, usually at least annually. It doesn't have to be a long review, but once a year, take a look at your previous decisions and make sure they're still appropriate for your current situation.
Right, and more and more people are asking me whether or not they ought to take the offer that their long-term care insurance company is providing for increased coverage amount, for an increased premium. That's a way that the insurance companies are kind of hedging themselves against this increasing snowballing risk that they face and having to make payouts on a lot of their policies. And that's a discussion you need to have again with an independent financial planner. And you can do that at Fort Wealth Management with us. 512-433-6492 is our office line. Jennifer is very nice. She would be more than happy to talk to you over the phone and get you in for an appointment where we can consult with you.
Absolutely.
You can bring your policies. We have a great program. We call it the CAR program, Comprehensive Analysis and Review, where we actually have a team of specialists that can interact with your company, your policies, whether it's life insurance, long-term care, or annuities, to get in-force ledger balances, to get expected future benefits from them and premium amounts, just as though we were the agent, even though we weren't. And that can help us assess better your situation. Like Alan said, you got to have this checked out maybe once every year, every couple of years at least, but often, and probably is the case with you, you haven't done it in a long, long time or never, ever even looked at it. And again, this is a retirement journey. Talk 1370. You're listening to Justin Fort, Jennifer Carter. We are talking about health, wealth, and freedom. You need to live life your way, all the way. Again, you can call us live at 512-643-5483 or send us your questions and comments to ask@fortwm.com. And before we go to our break, Alan, I just wanted to ask you again about the difference between purchasing a policy where premium payments can increase, or are there options that people can use where their premiums are not going to ever increase? Have there been innovations? When we get back from this break, we're going to talk to Alan about some of those options a little bit more detailed. And of course, if we can't get Alan back on, I know a lot of the answers to these things, so I'll be happy to discuss that with you. Again, this is Justin, Retirement Journey, Talk 1370.
Some things will never change. That's just the way it is. Ah, but don't you believe that?
This is Talk 1370. You're listening to Retirement Journey with Justin Fort. You can call us live at 512-643-5483. And Alan, we're running late in the show, and I apologize for keeping you on so long, but this is just such an important topic, and you've got such great information, and I'm really pretty positive that our listeners are appreciating what we're talking about today, and it can really help them.
Happy to be here.
And I just wanted to kind of end with you on the big concerns that people tell me about not getting long-term care insurance in the first place. They'll tell me, number one, I'm not going to go to a facility. And in many cases, they're not aware they can have home care. Mm-hmm. Number two, they're going to tell me that I think I have my children are going to take care of me, or they point to the spouse in the meeting. Number three, they tell me that it's just too expensive. Number four, they tell me, I don't know that I trust insurance companies, and their premiums are probably going to increase on me. How do we answer that in 15, 20 seconds?
One of the concerns is you don't want to go to a facility, and as we talked about a few minutes ago, make sure that the policy covers home care. That's the bottom line. You want a policy that covers you in any environment. Relying on your children, our families are going to be there for us if we have a need for care, but it's not a positive thing. It's not something that you want to do on purpose. A lot of people rely on family members because they really had no idea that their regular health insurance or Medicare doesn't pay for long-term care. Well, your listeners today have learned that they're not covered for long-term care, so they need to have a plan. And it may or may not include insurance, as we've talked about. Maybe it is too expensive for your individual situation. But until you see an objective financial advisor and really have them analyze your situation and show you premium amounts for various benefit levels, you really don't know whether or not you can afford the insurance. So getting back to what we've talked about so much here today, it's important to face this issue and have a plan for long-term care, whether it includes insurance or not.
You heard it from Alan Hamm, author of How to Plan for Long-Term Care. Alan is a specialist and expert in this area. This is what he does, what he's passionate about. It's very important for all of you to go eyes wide open into this and get the help that you need. Alan, we're so grateful for having you on the show today. And can you just help us and our listeners understand how they can get a copy of your book, which I highly recommend?
Yes, they can go to Allen, ALLEN, at superiorltc.com. Actually, email me at that address, and we'll provide them with a free hard copy edition of the book, a 2015 edition.
Wow.
Can I order 50 from you? I want to keep these in my office.
Right. So let's don't go overboard. I'll have to charge you for 50.
I'm joking. It's a great book. Alan, thank you so much, and we'll look forward to having you on the show maybe again. We could definitely spend some more time on this topic.
Sounds good, Justin and Jennifer.
Right.
Thank you very much.
Have a wonderful Labor Day.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
You too. Bye-bye.
Right, bye-bye. Well, we're down to the wire here. Had some news and views, but you know what? You know me. I just go long in the tooth,
Yes.
and sometimes I just can't control myself. I want to get as much out of our visitors as possible. Great people that we have on this show. It's a wonderful way for you to get some information that you didn't have before in a way over the radio waves here, and. We're going to be talking more about the market. So a big question has been: are we in a bear market? Are we in a correction territory? And you can look online and you can look at a number of places. But this is from NBC or CNBC, I should say, .com. It says 8 things you need to know about bear markets. If you want to know, you can go there and check out this article, basically talking about how bear markets normally have a decline of at least 20% from their peaks. A correction is when stocks fall 10% or more. So we're barely at a correction territory. But you know what? No one knows the future again. And you have to have a plan that is other than a portfolio in a brokerage account or an IRA or 401k. That's not a plan. It may be a plan for how to allocate those assets. I'll give you that. But it's not a retirement plan. It's not a longevity plan. We want to help you get that in order. And we want you to be in a position where you sleep well at night and don't worry about the volatility that's going to continue to happen for the rest of probably your life and my life in the market, because that's normal, that's natural. And the reason you're afraid, if you are afraid, is because you don't have a solid plan, and I think you know it. And if that's the case, you know what to do. You got our number, 512-433-6492. We want the best for you. We'll shoot you straight. We'll be honest. We'll tell you the truth. We've got a fiduciary duty. We're independent. And we try to be fun in the office. We make cookies. We drink lemonade. We have coffee. Anyways, we'll look forward to having you back, being here 12:30 to 1:30 next weekend. And next week, we're not going to have a guest. You know who we're going to be speaking with? Jennifer and myself.
Yay.
Yay. And we're going to talk about the retirement planning process, what matters most, and what you can do about it. Again, we'll see you then. Have a wonderful Labor Day. Thank you so much for our guests. And I'm Justin. This is Retirement Journey, Talk 1370.